Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the President's Live Briefing. We have about 182 people who are registered for today's briefing. As a reminder, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Lemons.
Thank you, Yoshanda, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining me and Vice President for Administration and Finance, Rene Rotolo, for this live briefing. Spring term is well underway, as we know, and it's maybe starting to feel almost normal to be having our classes done remotely, and maybe that's a good thing, and I think it probably is. At the same time, we're all aware that it's still very challenging, and it's not the easiest way for us to be getting through a term. So we are looking forward to what might be different about the fall term. Just a word though about what's happening right now, because one of the concerns that has been raised very frequently, particularly by students, is around mental health. And what are we doing to address the concerns for mental health, which we know have only increased through the last 12 months of this pandemic? I've mentioned before that we've gotten very few of the CARES Act funds yet to the campus. That's going to change very soon now. But the one amount of funding that we got directly to the campus was specifically for mental health, and we hired 5 part-time mental health counselors with those funds. So that's one of the concrete steps that's been taken. But also, there are other things that are happening because of student concerns and some really great action on the part of students that's been joined by some others, student affairs, vice president, IT, also the legal counsel for the college, have been working on putting together a Blackboard portal that will focus on mental health and be a place where resources can be found easily and readily by students. So that's another thing that we're doing. Just this morning, I spoke with our new District 15 City Council member, Kevin Riley. He volunteered. First, he asked, "What are you doing about mental health on campus?" and volunteered that that's a major one of his concerns going into the city council. And I told him what I tell all of our elected officials when I meet with them, is that we really see them as partners, and we look also to them to help guide us to resources that will be helpful for our students. And they're very much on board with that, and he certainly was. So I'm mentioning it because I think it's important, first of all, for us to keep acknowledging how serious this has been for our students and how much need there is, and also just highlight the fact that while we're aware of it and we are doing things, we know there's more that we want to do, and we hope we will be able to do as we move forward. So going back to the fall term, for some time now, I think since we began talking about and planning for the fall, the target for us has been around 50% occupancy. We don't know that that is exactly the right number because we don't know what the conditions are going to be in the fall. But that's been our target, because that seems to put us in a region where if we plan for that, we have the ability to go up or down from that without making any major, very difficult changes midstream as we get into the fall term. Our current approved plan for occupying the campus takes us up to 25%. And we have actually been well below 25% the whole time over the last month since that plan was approved. And although it does give us the ways and the process that we could bring the campus occupancy up to that, we have not done it because we haven't needed to, for one thing, because our courses have been remote. And And we really have taken the approach that the fewer people we have on campus during this period of time, the better. That will change in the fall. As I said, we are aiming for 50% occupancy in the fall right now. And that what that 50% really means is not in terms of people, it's not in terms of classes or course sections or offices. We're really focusing on our space occupancy because that's really the key parameter that we have to really watch when we think about controlling any potential transmission of the coronavirus. It's really the spaces that we're in and how many people are in those spaces. So we're aiming for 50%. Some spaces are going to be, by the fall, probably going to be safe for higher than 50%. There'll be other spaces that may be not safe for up to 50% and may need to be lower than that. So, but we're thinking about it in terms of space. In terms of people, I think it's very likely if we're at 50% occupancy, that would probably mean about 50% of the student body might be on campus, not all at one time, but over the course of a week. But it could mean that many faculty are pretty much 100% on campus for their schedules, because they would be meeting with different groups of students at different times. And that's what we need to be planning for, and that's the kind of flexibility that we need to have. We also are preparing to have probably maybe optimistically 75 or more high flex classrooms set up. It kind of depends on whether we're able to get together the resources we need for that in time to get the equipment and do the kinds of installations that are needed. But our aim is to have a large number of high flex classrooms set up that have these special microphones and video that will facilitate having part of the class in class and part of the class remote at any given time. We also will have a number of portable units set up that can be moved from one room to another to also facilitate that same way of delivering the courses. We know that that's going to require a lot more support than we normally have on campus. These are going to be new facilities, and it's new technology for a lot of faculty and for a lot of students. And so we're also planning to increase the IT support that's available so that we hopefully can take care of the issues as they arise, which they always do. They inevitably do arise. And so we want the faculty to feel confident that they'll be supported. We want students to feel confident that they'll be supported as we work in what will really be now kind of our third way of offering courses over the last year and a half. So these are things that are underway. There's a lot that's uncertain and unknown about it, but I want to thank everyone who's been a part of this planning process up to now. I know has been difficult. It's challenging. It kind of forces us to think out of the box a lot. But I appreciate that that's happening. And it's very important, because if we're going to provide for our students the way that we really all want to, that's what we need to do. One of the questions that has come up pretty frequently lately is about testing. Will we be doing testing on campus in the fall? And I think it's quite likely that we will be. We don't know exactly how that would be done right now. That also is something that needs to be budgeted for and will be budgeted for actually by the university. But I think it's likely that we will have some form of testing on campus to assure us that we are safe and that if there are issues, that we will be able to catch them before they really create larger problems. Vaccinations may be mandated. I don't know about that, but what we're hearing now at the national level is that by May, there should be enough vaccine available for everyone in the country to be vaccinated. And so I think that's very hopeful. If that were the case, if we had everybody that's coming to campus at Lehman College vaccinated, our concerns would be drastically reduced, Doesn't mean that somebody couldn't come on campus carrying a viral load, but it means that it would be highly unlikely that that would result in a serious illness, because that's what we know vaccination is doing for us. Vaccination is really preventing almost completely serious illness, hospitalization, and death. So if the vaccine is available like that, then the real challenge for us is to get 100% vaccination rate among Lehman College students, faculty, and staff, with the exceptions of individuals that have medical reasons why they can't be vaccinated. That really should be our goal. We want to go for 100%. We're going to really be pushing that. We had a really, I think, successful vaccination town hall last week with Sarah Lindsay, who's our Lehman poster child for vaccination nationally. We'll do more events like that, and in other ways, we're going to promote vaccination, mandatory or not. We want 100% vaccination on Lehman's campus. That's the way that we're going to not only ensure that we have a really successful fall term, but it's the way that we're going to feel confident that we're all safe. And that is still of primary importance to us. Wanted to say a little bit about the budget. Moving on to another topic, the Board of Trustees met on Monday in its subcommittees, not the full board, which that will meet on the 22nd of March, but the subcommittees met, including the Fiscal Affairs Committee. They approved the current year's budget. So we now have an approved budget for this year. And we have actually received now what our allocations will be. It looks like about a 4 to 5% reduction instead of the 20% reduction that we have been working with for, through the first 3 quarters, really, of this fiscal year. So this is significantly better. We're still analyzing it to fully understand what this budget really means. It's not in exactly the same form that we have gotten our budgets in the past, but in the next week or two, we will have a pretty good idea of what this means. We also haven't seen our CARES Act allocations yet, something that also will be significant. Our elected officials seem very confident that the Biden stimulus bill will pass. As you know, that's now actively under consideration in the Senate. And it looks like some form of that will pass. There's $40 billion in there for higher education, the significant state and local funding. We won't know probably until April or mid-April or maybe later how that will really play out for us, but the state budget will be approved by April 1. And we expect that what's happening in Washington this month will have an impact on what that state budget finally looks like. On the topic of funding, I wanted to say just a few things about fundraising at Lehman, the Lehman College Foundation, and other aspects of that. I think we've all had a heightened awareness of the fundraising side of the college since we got that amazing gift from Mackenzie Scott. Fundraising is a year-round activity, happens all the time. We do have these special times when we are specifically having, for instance, a Giving Tuesday, or when we've had the campaign for Lehman, which has really been going now for a number of months and has raised over $1 million. We also have an annual fund that we solicit mainly our alums to support. So we have fundraising going on all year round. Most of that fundraising is to support students through either scholarships or through the food bank or micro grants, programs like that we have that provide direct support for students. And those activities are all organized by our Division of Institutional Advancement, headed by Vice President Susan Ebersol. We also have the Lehman College Foundation, which is an independent 501c3 organization that is directly linked to the college, and its sole purpose is to support the college's mission, but it operates as an independent organization in doing that. Now, I'm on the board of the foundation, as is Vice President Ebersol, as is Vice President Rotolo. And we also provide some staffing and support for the foundation. So it's a little confusing how this is a distinct independent entity as well as being part of the college with the sole purpose of supporting the college. The foundation manages an endowment, which is right now around $7 million. That endowment has been at that level for some years. The foundation undertakes its own fundraising activities, including a gala, which is also largely supported by our Office of Institutional Advancement and primarily organized by that office. But the board members of the foundation help to solicit participation in the gala, and that's what brings in the funds that a gala can raise. To give you an idea of the significance of that $7 million endowment, we take down or take off the income from that invested amount each year, according to whatever the CUNY central office determines we should. This year it's 3.75%. 3.75% of 7 million is around $260,000 for this year. And that is income then that will come in that will be largely used for scholarships. And to give you an idea of what kind of funding has gone into scholarships in recent years, it's generally been somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000. So the endowment up to this point does not provide enough income itself to support those scholarships, which means that the gala and other fundraising activities are really critical for supporting those scholarships. Of course, we'd like to have more scholarship funding available than we do. One of the things that will be very helpful now with the Mackenzie Scott gift is that we're putting a sizable amount of that gift into our endowment, and the income from that will then support additional scholarships for students. So that's one of the really wonderful benefits that we will be seeing immediately in the coming year from that gift, and that we will see every year thereafter. And that's really significant. So the gift that we received from Mackenzie Scott is being used in large part to increase our endowment. Our endowment with what's coming in from that gift will now be over $30 million. It'll be close to $32 million or $33 million. And so you can see that that will dramatically increase the annual income that will be available then to support scholarships, to support students in other ways, to support special initiatives, which are yet to be determined, many of them. And these are activities and they're areas that we can't support with money that comes from the state or comes from tuition. So having funds coming from the endowment is really very empowering and enabling of the future for Lehman College. So I'll have more to say about this as we go on. I don't want to take any more time right now with my opening comments, but I did want to say a few more things about fundraising at the college because it is such an important activity. And I know there's just a lot of interest around it because of the gift that we received. One final thing that I want to say about the fundraising that we do, and that is fundraising at its best should be done in a way that's directed and directed by our strategic plan, because the strategic plan outlines what our priorities are. These are the things that we want to see developing over the coming years at the college. We think these are important, the most important things for our mission as an educational institution in the Bronx, in New York City. And so when we do fundraising, what we want to do is to try to raise funds to support those activities and those areas. And that is what will guide what we do for fundraising and what is going to guide what happens with the Mackenzie Scott gift as we move forward into the coming years. And if you want to, I found it really interesting to look at what other institutions around the country who've received also funding from Mackenzie Scott, what they're doing. And one of the really interesting articles that I read a week or two ago highlighted a number of HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. One of them, Bowie State, is a college that we know very well because Bowie State is one of the 4 other colleges that we're working with on a very special project on student success. And I know the president, Amita Bro, of that college, and she had some really interesting things to say about what they're doing with the money they received from Mackenzie Scott. And it's very similar to what we're doing. It's A large amount of that money is going in to build their endowment. And then they have some other more immediate uses for those funds. So I found it really interesting that we are really settling on very similar strategies around how to use those really unexpected funds. So with that, I will end my opening remarks, and I'd like to turn to Vice President Rotolo to give us whatever she would like to say at the beginning here.
Thank you, President Lemons. I
Yeah, I'm a
appreciate it.
professor. You can.
Did you ever have one of those days? I'm having one of those days.
You can call me anything. It's okay.
Don't say that. Anyway, I do have one announcement I'd like to make. We will be sending out 2 surveys on Monday, this coming Monday, which is March 8th. One survey will be going to faculty and staff, and a separate survey will be going to students. This survey pertains to a return to campus for the fall. We want to hear from you and get your thoughts about returning to campus. So please, when you receive the survey on Monday, probably later in the day, please respond, because we really want to get your thoughts. And that's really all I need to say at this point. So I think we should take questions.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's just start at the top here. The first question is, will be going in person optional? Now, I don't know if that's from a student perspective or from a staff and faculty perspective. I'm going to start with this, and then Vice President Rotolo will ask you to follow up. So I think that the idea of optional is probably not one that we're going to be entertaining, because I think it will be very important for us to be able to plan with certain assumptions. So I don't anticipate that coming to campus is going to be optional as a matter of personal discretion. However, we've said repeatedly, and we will keep saying, that there are legitimate reasons why some individuals will not come to campus. And those will be primarily for health reasons. It may not be their health, it may be somebody they live with. There will be exceptions that will be made for students, for faculty, and for staff, according to guidelines which are not entirely in place yet. So Vice President Rotolo, why don't you go ahead and add to that?
So I think one of the key aspects of our revised planning, because as President Lemons had said earlier, our existing approved return to campus plan is our starting point. It's based on a 25% occupancy. We're going to be looking at it, reconvening the committees, looking at it, and looking at how we improve or increase it to 50% capacity. But I think the real key is, and I think what we're all struggling with is we're looking at where we're at today. We don't know where we're going to be at come the fall semester, the end of August. So we have to build flexibility into what we do. So in the discussions so far with deans, and I believe the discussions the deans are having with their chairs and their faculty, they're really looking at how they can approach being on campus. And that's where the high flex comes into play, partially on, partially off, because if in fact we're not at a place in the fall where we can have full occupancy, we have to maintain what is set as the current distances that are required in spaces. So that'll drive how many people can be in at a time. So there will be, yes, there will be some component. And I should also say, we have classes going on campus now. They're working at the 25% level. They've been doing that since last semester, and they've been going very well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to add that we have not had problems. So
no, we have not had on-campus transmission.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, because it means we've gained experience going up to that 25% mark in some of those areas, and that's been successful. So that gives us some confidence that we can move ahead. And I mean, I think what you said is so right, that it's still very unpredictable what the fall will look like. If you look at the infection curve for the last 12 months, there are 3 humps. And whether those will repeat again, we really don't know. And if you may remember that in the summer, all the epidemiologists that really know about this were saying we're very likely to have a big peak in the late fall and the winter. And sure enough, we did. And we'll be listening to them, because they have been pretty good at predicting those kind of major trends. But what's going to be so different now is if we have a high degree of vaccination, that will really change the game. That will change it dramatically. It won't change the precautions that we're going to take. We know we're going to be taking those same precautions. We're going to be wearing masks, and we will be maintaining some level of distancing. So those precautions are going to be there, as well as the cleaning and other things that we've done. But what we just don't know about is how that's going to impact density, really, the number of people, the percentage of occupancy. So there's a question about whether science courses will be in person in the fall. We can't tell you about specific courses right now. The schedule is still being put together. And so I couldn't tell you about specific science courses, but it certainly will be optional to have courses in all of the schools, some of those courses on campus. And this is one of the things that the faculty and the chairs are working on right now, is figuring out how that can work, how we can do that in a way that will not only be able to hit the 50% target more or less for occupancy, but also be able to be adjusted upward and downward by the time we get close to the fall. So here's another one for you, Vice President Rotolo. Will the Apex building and its recreational facilities reopen in the summer?
I don't believe they'll reopen in the summer, but I do believe they will reopen in the fall. We're following state guidelines. And in a recent meeting with CUNY Central, they said definitely they will be looking towards athletics starting again in the fall, which I would think also means reopening of the Apex building.
Great. And there's a question about in-person classes this summer, and the answer to that is we're doing the summer like we've done the last 2 terms. It will be online like last summer was. We know that we're not ready to make that change this summer, and we actually had a very successful summer term last summer. We had actually a fairly large increase in enrollment last summer. And so we plan to do it in exactly the same way. Question about the guidelines for coming back to campus and whether those are coming from the central administration or whether they're really for us. And the answer to that is that this is being done campus by campus. There are some general guidelines that will come from the New York State Department of Health that we will abide by. There will be guidelines from the CDC that we will be minding, but each campus is going to look different in the fall in the way that we're having students and faculty and staff in person. There are vertical campuses and there are horizontal campuses in CUNY, and even the vertical ones are different from each other and the horizontal ones are different from each other. They're in different areas and they face different challenges. So we will really be, as Vice President Rotolo said, we're going to be modifying our existing plan, which has been approved, in a way that is really distinct and unique to Lehman College. You want to add to that at all?
No, you covered it all very well.
So question about what I said about faculty being 100% present in the fall. What about the professional staff, HEO staff who have 5-day per week full-time schedules? Do you want to respond to that, Vice President Rotolo?
So we've asked each of the actually asked all of the vice presidents to speak to their directors, their direct reports, and to have discussions with them about what is going to work in their offices. We have situations where there are people that are working successfully remotely, and there's not a need for them to come on campus. That provides for us space to spread out those areas that really must be on campus. So, but we're leaving it to the directors to look at their areas and really determine what's working well, what's not working well, who has to be on campus, who can say remote if we need to provide additional space for those people that must be on campus. So it's not a definite 100%. It's a looking at it case by case basis, department by department basis. There are a lot of departments where people share the space and we can't have them all in at once in the same space. Not at least under the current situation.
So will temperatures be taken when students enter classes? Will masks be mandatory to wear around campus, outside, or just in buildings? We're not going to be taking temperatures. That's not part of our plan. Masks will be mandatory everywhere, and that's not going to change. It's tempting to think that you can go outside, you take your mask off, but you don't know who you're going to encounter and who you're going to be near. And we're not going to take that chance. So masks will be required everywhere. Again, there will be exceptions. There are some individuals, probably very few, but there are some individuals who may not be able to wear a mask. But the vast majority of us are going to be wearing masks 100% of the time when we're on campus.
I would say the only exception is if you are alone in a private office and no one else is there, but it must be put on when anyone else comes in.
Right.
And when you leave.
So if I'm vaccinated, would that improve my chances of being able to come back to campus for classes? Well, first of all, if you're vaccinated, it certainly increases your safety factor for doing that. One of the things that I think it's really important to remember is that when you're vaccinated, it's really protecting you. It isn't necessarily protecting everybody that's around you, but it's definitely protecting you. Doesn't mean that you can't be infected, although the data that we're seeing now is indicating that it definitely reduces infection dramatically, but not completely. But it will prevent you from getting sick. In fact, I don't know yet about Johnson & Johnson's vaccine, but the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, just about 100% prevent serious illness and hospitalization. So if you're vaccinated, you are protected, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't carry some virus and that you couldn't infect someone else. So that's why I think, for instance, from the viewpoint of staff and faculty, we want our staff and faculty 100% vaccinated because that protects them. And of course, we want students vaccinated too, because that protects them. And if we're all vaccinated, it is no question that it would reduce the chances of transmission dramatically. So again, that's our goal. Is it likely the child care center will be open in the fall? Our child care center has remained open the whole time. We've never closed our child care center. And so it will be open in the fall. And I don't know, is there more that you want to say about that?
No, it has never closed. It's been open since probably late spring of, I don't even remember when it was, in 2020 when we closed. A few weeks later, it was opened up for essential workers, children by New York City, by actually New York State. So it's never closed.
Right. So there's a question about our open campus and what that will look like in the fall. It's not open now, it's restricted. Yes. Why don't you comment on that,
sure.
Vice President Rotolo?
Right now, based on current conditions, our plan is to open one additional gate. So we'll have gate 8, gate 5, and gate 13, which allows faculty, staff, or students who will take the train and get off at the Kingsbridge stop to come in through that entrance. But as of right now, that's our only plan. Again, remaining flexible depending on how things look when we actually go back, or even later in the fall, we could revisit that. But for now, the plan as it's laid out in our approved plan is to just have the 3 gates open.
So what about food services?
All right, so that's a little more complicated. Our food service vendor, who has not returned, is no longer in business. CUNY is in the process of putting in place a central plan or a central contract for food service. Lehman is in the phase 1 implementation of that plan. We are anticipating that as soon as the contract is signed, which should be in the very near future, the firm will get in touch with us and begin making plans for coming on campus through the summer to be prepared for food service. But I don't expect food service to look the way it did if we're still operating in the same way we are. It'll probably be more of a grab and go type of thing. But we'll know more about that as we actually begin meeting with the new vendor.
Great. I think I don't know if you want to say anything more about, since food service came up, but the new vendor, when there was a bidding process for a new vendor, I don't think there were very many bidders, but there were specifications for what we were looking for. And there are going to be some differences, even looking into, the next year, into 2022 and 2023, when things hopefully really do get back to looking more normal. Probably the food service won't look exactly like it has in the past, right?
No, well, we're not dealing with a mom and pop type operation as we have as long as I've been at Lehman. We're dealing with a larger corporation who does this. They do higher ed food service. They do food service to other, larger campus settings. So there will be differences. Yes. They do have some, they'll have specials of the day, which will be a lower priced offering. We're again, when we start working with them, we'll get more details of their particular plan for Lehman.
Right.
Because they are trying to tailor to each of the campuses and locations and the students in the campus.
And I remember that one of the criteria was to be able to have those lower priced offerings for students.
Yeah, and that's written in the contract. That was, insisted upon by the chancellor.
Yeah. So question about courses, will they mostly be hybrid? I think that, that in general, that's probably the case. There are going to be a significant number of fully online courses again in the fall. Of course, some of those courses ran very successfully as fully online, and I know they will be offered that way again. And they're doing that in this spring, and they will do it again in the next coming fall. But I think that in general, offering the course in a hybrid format is providing the most flexible way to plan, because that gives each instructor the ability to shift, even dynamically, to shift when class meetings are happening in person, how many are coming in, and how frequently. So not all courses will be done that way, but I would imagine that many courses will be organized around that hybrid format. So what precautionary measures for distancing in faculty and general offices are being taken? I think this is a question again for you, Vice President Rotolo.
So in classes right now, we are maintaining 10-foot distances. The actual guidelines are 6 foot, but we opted to be a little more stringent. But with mask wearing, the guidelines are 6 foot separation. So we're looking at layouts and occupancies in classes with 6 foot distancing between people, which works out to be about somewhere between a third and 50%, depending on the size of the room and the location. Now, in offices, if you're unable to maintain that 6 foot distance, then we will have to work out a separate schedule for occupying the space. You would not be able to occupy it at the same time. And that's some of the things, and from what I'm actually being told by some faculty members, is that they normally work those schedules out themselves, and work on alternate, days. But for administrative staff, their directors would have to work out the schedule of alternating days, alternating weeks, so that they maintain the distance necessary within occupied spaces.
So this is another interesting question that we haven't covered yet. So about those common areas that students go to in between classes, and how that will work when students are on campus and then they have time in between classes, what those spaces will look like.
Again, we'll set the spaces up with, we'll use a little bit more than the 6-foot spacing, but I anticipate in the fall a lot of outdoor stuff happening. A lot of outdoor meeting spaces, a lot of outdoor sitting areas for students to stay between classes, a lot of outdoor stuff. It's better outdoors than gathering indoors. But in those areas where we do have space for gathering, like the dining rooms or the cafeterias, they'll be spaced out, and we'll take away chairs and tables to maintain, I would say, a little bit larger than the 6-foot spacing required. And again, masks will be required.
So I think we've become more like Europeans. It always used to be amazing to me to be in Europe in February and see people sitting in outdoor cafes with their coats and
Yeah.
But I think we've learned as New Yorkers we can do that too,
Yeah.
even in January. So yeah, I think we've discovered a whole new area that we thought was off limits for about 4 or 5 months of the year. What will classroom capacity be? How many students will a classroom hold?
I mean, that varies by the rooms. We have a variety of different rooms. And as I said earlier, it averages out to be somewhere between 35% and 50% of normal occupancy in a space. So a classroom of 30 would be anywhere from 12 to 15 students in it, as an example.
Yeah.
Again, it varies depending on the actual space itself and what's going on in that space.
So even though, we talk about these linear distances that we try to achieve, there's a lot of variability in that. It really depends a lot on the room. And so there's really not going to ever be a fixed answer to that question. I think it's really going to be really dependent on the given classroom. It looks like we've answered all the questions so far. So when schools open, they get more positive cases. What will happen if we have a positive case on campus? Will we need to close for 2 weeks? Great question. That's an excellent question. So, that's part of responding to that is in our reopening plan. I don't know if you want to give any details about that, but that is one of the things that had to be in that plan, is what would happen, because we knew that was a contingency that was a very real one, right? That we would have positive cases on campus. We have had individuals who, although they didn't get exposed to the virus on campus, we've had positive individuals on campus, and there's been tracing that was done around those individuals. Can you elaborate on that at all, Vice President Rotolo?
Sure. There's an entire procedure we follow. Whenever we're notified of either a positive test result, or that someone was with someone who has a positive test result, HR is notified. HR then gets in touch with the department that person belongs to, finds out when they were in last, who they were around. Anyone that they may have been in close contact with is then required to either self-quarantine for 14 days or, and there's a waiting period after the actual date of someone's positive test or somebody or your exposure that you then can get tested. And if you have a negative result, you come back on campus. So it's either self-quarantine for 14 days or receive a negative test result, a COVID test result, which is then submitted to HR to allow you to come back on campus. And we've been following that procedure since we actually went remote back in March of last year. And the same is true with students, and the same has been happening in the child care center as well. And it's reported both to New York City Department of Health and New York State Department of Health. And if there are any additional guidance or recommendations from them, we'll follow those as well. And that's all done. The reporting to the New York City Department of Health is done by the HR department, and reporting to New York State is done by the Office of Administration and Finance. I don't remember the exact percentage. I think it was 11% of overall occupancy on campus. If you reach that amount, you must close down. But I know our plan has an exact amount in it, an exact percentage of overall occupancy that requires you to shut down. And of course, we'd follow New York State, New York City, or CUNY guidelines, who actually had us, gave us who told us to close down last March when we did.
So how about what are we thinking about how we're going to monitor compliance with mask wearing on campus?
Well, I think that's up to all of us. If you walk around, you see someone without it, you have to shame them into doing it. Early on, I was doing that because it took a while to get everyone in the habit of wearing the mask. I think now, a year into this, we're all much more used to wearing a mask, although, occasionally people do forget. But if you see someone, say something. And if you feel uncomfortable saying anything, then report them. And I think we can set up, actually, I think we did. We set up and it's in our plan, and we'll advertise this as we get back, but we set up a specific email site, an email address to report any violations to, so that you didn't feel obligated to be the one to say it. And we'll publicize that again when we get back.
And we'll have an ongoing discussion about mask wearing and about other things that are important for safety. So I think, I'm pretty confident that at Lehman, we will have compliance with that, that we won't have an issue with that. And because everybody will appreciate that it's their health and it's everybody else's health that's at stake. And there's a question about whether there'll be testing to enter the theater. I would say no. There won't be. There will be whatever testing we do will be campus-wide, systematically, and we will have in the theater, like all the other spaces, we'll have the distancing that is necessary to protect everyone, and so that will be the safeguard there, not testing to enter into any particular space. So what happens if our professor for a course has COVID? Well, that will probably depend a whole lot on how serious that case is, and that's definitely going to be something that will be handled case by case. What we really hope, and I think it's not even unrealistic to hope, that we won't have any cases like that. We want everybody vaccinated so that there won't be any serious COVID cases at all. And one of the things I was thinking about when you were answering the question about closing down or what do we do in case of positive cases is that, if we do get into a situation where we would have to close the campus, one thing I think we all feel pretty confident is we know how to do that.
Yeah.
We know how to do that, and we know how to keep functioning just fine. And so that's one that I'm really not losing sleep about. I think that the more challenging thing is what we're doing by coming back partially onto campus at 50% or whatever that percent ends up being, because that is really much more difficult to work out. But if we get into that situation, I know that we'll be fine. Is the college planning to provide any PPE for faculty and staff?
We provide it for everyone, faculty, staff, students. We provide masks. We provide gloves in certain situations. We provide disinfecting wipes. We've been providing it for all the classes on campus. We provide it to the researchers on campus that have been functioning. Yeah, we provide it for everyone. We've actually been stocking up.
And we have hand sanitizer stations everywhere. And I think you might want to say a little more about kind of the preparations that we're making, because one of the concerns always has been restrooms and hand washing, and there's been over the last 12 months we've had a lot of discussions around how we do that, whether we use hair dryers to hand dryers, air dryers to dry hands and so on. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Sure. So part of what we're doing right now, and I think I've said this before, or maybe in multiple different situations, but we're doing a room by room, floor by floor, building by building analysis of not just the classrooms and offices, making sure windows are operable, making sure mechanical systems are all functioning, but we're doing a survey of the bathrooms. And any bathrooms that do not have automatic flushometers, automatic faucets, we're going to be purchasing and installing those prior to coming back on the fall. And also we are purchasing automatic soap dispensers for the bathrooms as well, to replace the ones now that are manual. Not all of them, but we'll be locating them in 2 stations. We have signage up that bathrooms should be limited in occupants. We actually have signage up all over the campus about occupancies in spaces, 1 person at a time in an elevator. And those spaces that are occupied now has occupancy signs in them, and we'll be adding that to all other spaces that will be occupied. And we're looking at all building systems to make sure everything's fully functioning. And the difference between hand towels and dryers, it's interesting because I was looking at the CDC site. I think it was there, or one other site I was looking at, and now they're saying either hand towels or hand dryers. So, but we'll provide hand towels.
So we've been back and forth, and now we're back. Yes, well, that's all part of our learning curve, I guess. Some courses used to require group work in labs. Is there any valid in-person alternative to still do that? Would lab courses have to remain online? Again, I don't know which courses right now are being contemplated. Lab courses are being contemplated. Do you know, Vice President Rotolo, do you have any specific information?
I believe they're contemplating some lab courses on campus. I don't know the details yet. I believe we're meeting on Friday, and I hope to start getting some more details. I know that the schedule has to be put into the system next week. So they're trying to finalize exactly what is going to be on campus, what's not going to be on campus, and what's going to be in a hybrid format. But I do believe there's some discussion about having some labs on campus. Lab spaces are different, especially teaching or research labs are different than most of the other spaces we have on campus, because they're 100% outside air all the time under negative pressure. So it's a very different environment. It's almost like a hospital environment.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we have definitely learned over the last year is that there are all kinds of ways that we can work together. So groups can work together quite effectively without being physically together. That doesn't work if it's really a hands-on kind of project, and there are those for sure. But I think one of the things that we will be taking away from this experience is a much more diverse idea about how we can work together effectively. And there was a question, and we're getting close to the end of our time. There's a question about, will we, as these details become more known, will we be sending out information? And yes, indeed, we will. And one of the things that you will be getting on Monday is an email from me that will go over a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of reentry to the campus in the fall. And we'll be as current as we can make it, but you can expect that there will be more of those communications as we move ahead, as when we get substantially new information about what's going to happen. And there will, in that email on Monday, there will also be some information about the surveys that will be going out. So that'll all be contained in one email that will go out. So we're really coming to the end of our time, and I thought, because we're really at the 1 year mark this week,
Yeah.
we're really at the 1 year mark. We went off campus on the 12th of March. So we're really there. And some of our last meetings, I went back and looked at my calendar. Our last on-campus meeting that I have a record of was March 2. And that was a meeting in the conference room in Schuster Hall on the 3rd floor with a large task force to talk about our response to COVID. And I remember that meeting really well. And one of the things I remember distinctly is telling everybody in the room that we should be ready in 2 days to move off campus. And, we came very close to that. And I think at that time, in a way, we really couldn't even believe that. I think it was very hard to imagine that we would really be doing that. And we certainly could not imagine what lay ahead. And at that time, I know when I thought about the coming fall, which was last fall of 2020, because that question came up at that time, I thought, well, surely we'll be back on campus fall 2020. And of course, we missed that mark by a long shot. So it's been interesting this week for me to reflect. I was in my office and I noticed I had pinned a graph on my bulletin board that I had made, because about February 28th, I started making a graph of the known cases in New York State. And on that day, on February 28th, there was one known case in the state of New York. And I made that graph, I guess, until we went remote. When we went remote, there were only 100 cases or so already that were on that graph, but it was an exponentially rising curve. And it was, you could tell pretty well already what was likely to happen. And of course, that is what happened. And so it's been, I'm sure we've all kind of at rounding this 1 year mark, we've all been reflecting a bit on the year and how tough it's been. It's been tough in the same way for all of us, but it's also had things that are different for each of us and what we've had to deal with. And we know the Bronx has been super hard hit by this pandemic. I think still one of the hardest hit areas in the country. And we're dealing with that still with COVID, but also with this financial and economic aftermath, which we're going to be dealing with for some time. So it's sobering to think back over the year, but I also have to be really grateful for the way the Lehman community has pulled together, because there have been extraordinary efforts in every quarter. Everybody on the faculty and staff has really worked very hard and done what needed to be done to keep classes going, to keep the college moving, and that really has happened. But it hasn't happened. Wouldn't have had to happen. It wasn't automatic. It happened because of all these efforts that were made by everybody on campus. and students who have dealt with very tough situations, sometimes without really good internet access, without the computers that they needed initially, for sure. All of these things have been really challenging, but I think we've all got to give ourselves a pat on the back and say, you know, for all of that difficulty, we've really done well. And you know, looking forward, I think that should give us a lot of hope. So with that, we'll bring this briefing to a close. Thank you again for joining us. And when the weekend arrives, have a good weekend.
And be sure to answer the survey. Have a good
Be
weekend,
sure to
everyone.
answer the survey.